Hi, I'm Wendy Murdoch, and this is Webinars with Wendy. I've been doing a series of webinars during the pandemic, which sadly has gone on a lot longer than any of us expected, but that's okay. We're all going to get through it, and we're going to get through everything that's going on right now. And these webinars are how we do it. It's by sharing information, meeting new friends, and discovering that there's more connections than we realize, like Linda knows both Anne and myself. Today, my guest is Anne Ramsey. Anne Ramsey. Yeah. Thank you so much, Anne, for joining. I'm going to talk a little fast today. Like I never talk fast, right? Anne Ramsey's joining us today. And we haven't actually met in person, but we've communicated back and forth a few times. So I'm really grateful to you for joining me today. And would you please just give everybody I always love to know how my guests have gotten to where they are today. So I love the stories. So can you share how you wound up doing what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up, I think, like most horse loving people, I sort of just had the horse gene. I started riding as a kid, and I had a horse I loved, and fell in love with riding and sort of pursued it through college and beyond.
Did you grow up in California?
Yeah, I grew up in California. I actually grew up in the suburbs, but as soon as I could verbalize what I wanted to do, it was horses. So my mom just got me on horses, and it motivated every move I made from there on. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got more details about my education and pursuits in the presentation, but yeah, just a horse lover at heart, basically. Yeah.
And then, how did you get interested in farriery?
Oh, that was sort of a happy accident. I was working after I graduated from college as a veterinary technician. I was also working as a part-time horse trainer. I'd always been sort of a part-time horse trainer and riding instructor, but I met someone who said, you should do an apprenticeship with me and trim feet. And then I just got addicted. One of my mentors, Monique Craig, says horseshoeing is addicting. Yeah. And it's funny, Monique Craig was actually an adjunct visiting scholar at Cal Poly when I was a student there. So I've known her and bumped into her. Now she's a mentor and a good friend. But she's right, horseshoeing and trimming is absolutely addictive work once you get involved with it. So
and for anyone who doesn't know, we had Monique on for a webinar. I think it's like 6 months ago now. It feels this is a number 140.
Time flies.
So it's hard to keep track of what number that was. But you can go to the YouTube website and you can put in Monique. You can search for her, and her webinar was amazing. It was kind of like like a zip file, and I really feel like we need to.
You could spend hours learning from Monique, and I've spent. Well, I don't want to date both of us.
It's okay.
But I really feel like she'll be a mentor for life, and she's contributed so much to the science, publishing so many peer-reviewed papers.
Yeah.
Her podiatry center, where so many students have gone to learn. I've spent time studying there, just x-raying and shoeing horses.
Yeah, and they recently, I know they use Surefoot because they recently put up a post of the Heminetic pony, and it was a great
absolutely
success story.
Absolutely. Surefoot pads are a huge part of how we get severely lame horses shod. It's a huge part of how I get severely lame horses shod. I'm going to talk about that a little bit in my lecture. There are horses that I simply cannot get shod without using the pads because they can't stand once I remove the shoe.
Yeah,
they have to have.
Okay, we can get into that as we go.
Yeah,
so you studied with Monique, and now you're doing this. And if anybody has any questions, just remember to put it in the chat or the Q&A. That I can manage that. I can't manage the raised hand thing, even though it's a new icon on my Zoom. There's so much bandwidth. All right, so let's dive in.
Okay, I will start sharing my screen. That works. Okay. All right. So here we go. So I also, in addition to being a accredited professional farrier, I am also an rehabilitation specialist, and I'm going to.
Now, Sarah who can we just go back, because one of these days I'm going to have somebody explain what they're SERP and CERT.
Yeah, yeah.
What's
Maybe this slide will
okay, great.
help us with that a little
Jumping
bit.
ahead.
Yeah. So just a little bit about me. I have a Bachelor of Science in Animal and Equine Science from Cal Poly. That's also where I met Monique Craig. Graduated in 2006. And then I started volunteering in high school. I've worked a long time as a veterinary technician, so as a nurse. I did it as, an emergency room nurse. And I really liked that. I really entrenched myself in the model of veterinary medicine, where you work as a team, you work with the vet, it's a partnership to get these kinds of things done. And then I became certified in equine rehabilitation via this Animal Rehabilitation Institute. And I'm going to go to the next slide so it can actually break down for you what these certifications are, because I think it's really important. People can say, what is a CERT? What's a SARA? So let's do that.
It's unfortunate because we can't actually use the term physical therapy for
right.
animals, which is why we have created all these other
right. So I just wanted to, this slide actually kind of explains that.
Your slideshow every time, aren't I?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm actually right there with you. So like you and I were right on the same page. So equine rehabilitation, it's really sort of, the training is of the ilk of physical therapy, right? This human physical therapy began during World War I, right? We had people that got injured in the war. They came home and they needed someone to help them relearn to walk, use their body in a different way. Equine physical therapy began in the 1960s. And the therapist is really, if they're not a veterinarian, the therapist is someone who will work with the veterinarian who's already diagnosed the horse, okay? The CERT, so if someone's a CERT, then they are a veterinarian. Okay, so they're a veterinarian who's gone through additional training at the Animal Rehab Institute in Florida, which is the same place I went. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So the veterinarian.
I know Arlen. Yep.
Right. So then they have an additional certification at the end of their veterinary credential. The Animal Rehab Institute was started by Arlene White. She's a physical therapist for humans, but she also has a master's in animal physical therapy. The only place that used to offer one of these degrees was the University of Queensland in Australia. And so I believe that is where Arlene met, I think, Hillary Clayton, because I believe Dr. Hillary Clayton went there to get a master's or an additional degree in animal physical therapy. And it's also where she met, I think, Norelle Stubbs, because Norelle Stubbs, who is the, I think she has a master's degree and a doctoral degree in animal physical therapy. And she got those at the University of Queensland. And so those people make up the faculty there. So when I say I'm certified in equine rehabilitation, I don't mean I took a weekend course. I mean, I went to a multi-year program that involved over 200 hours of, educational class. I spent over 20 hours with Dr. Hillary Clayton herself, both in the classroom and hands-on. We did several long exams. The attrition rate is extremely high. Most people do not complete this. After your exams, you have to turn in basically a thesis. You have to follow 2 clinical cases, work with a vet, use your clinical reasoning to recommend and utilize your exercise protocols that you lay out for that horse. In my case, I also was shoeing those lame horses in addition to doing their physical therapy routines. And then you have to turn all of that in, and these are the people that end up grading your exams and deciding whether you pass or not. Okay, so that's when I say, I'm certified in equine rehabilitation, that's what it means. I'm a lay person, right? I don't have a veterinary degree, so I'm a certified equine rehabilitation assistant. Which,
okay, that's the difference between the A and the T.
Right.
assistant versus therapist. Okay, because, you know, I know of Arlen. In fact, I know her fairly well, and Dr.
Yes.
Clayton I've known for years, and I've known
Yes.
Narelle. But I didn't realize they had a distinction in their program between the A and the T, and that's what
Yes.
threw me.
And also, I will just say this: not anyone can be a Sarah. Okay, you can only not any lay person can just take the course and become a Sarah. You have to have either had a bachelor's degree in animal science or equine science, or you have to have been an animal. You have to have been a veterinary technician or veterinary nurse. So the attrition rate is high. They do not take anyone. This is a very serious program for serious people.
And you know, in this country, we've got CIRA, CERT, and CERP, which is the one that's Dr. Stephen Adair at UT Tennessee. And
yes,
in many ways, we lag so far behind Europe. I'm sure you realize this, where
yes.
Animal physical therapy is a profession that's been around for a long time, and it's easy to find a therapist to work with your horse, both because landmass is so much smaller and there's so many more people that are available.
Yeah.
In this country, this is something that I feel so strongly that we really need to expand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think education about animals, physical health in general is lacking, you know, and it's a matter of animal welfare. So in any event, that's a little bit of the background, because people always say, what do you mean you do equine rehabilitation? What is that? You know? So I just thought this is a great time to really flesh that out. And then I also thought I would talk a little bit about, you know, what I do. Like, people say, well, what do you do when you come out and look at a horse? And because I have these dual sort of education paths that I've pursued really fervently, it's a whole horse assessment. And I break it down into stages, right? I would have to. So the first one for me is, well, one, I would just say, first and foremost, if I come out and a horse is lame, there are some things that I'm going to look at on the horse, but ultimately I'm going to say to the client, I can't do anything for you until you've had a veterinary workup. You have a lame horse, ethically, responsibly, there's nothing I can offer you unless you've had a clinical examination by a vet. But I will sort of look at the horse and try to educate the owner about points of concern, hot spots. I will look at the feet. I am a farrier. There are certain things I can do independently and educate the horse owner about. Okay. So this is kind of what I would do. So where I start is I just start looking at range of motion testing of joints. And this would be through a manual manipulation of the axial skeleton, which would be the spine and the back. And then also manual manipulation of the limbs. And what I'm looking for is there any rotation or fixation of joints? Do I have a knee or, you know, a carpus that won't bend? Do I have a hock that won't flex? To me, that's a tip off that there's a joint problem. And that's something that I would mention to the horse owner. You know, and I would say to them, is this something that has been worked up by your vet? Like, let's say that I come out and there's a horse that isn't lame, but the complaint is, you know, I can't get my horse to perform a particular way. I can't get my horse to change leads. The flying change to the right or to the left is sticky or croup high. I'm going to start asking, has this been worked up? Have you looked at this? We're going to start investigating it. I kind of think of myself as like a private investigator. You know, I'm like, what's going on here? And I love it because I get to go digging around. I think of like I'm snorkeling through the horse's body, right? And it's so much fun. Range of motion of the spine. I'm not sure a lot of people realize that there is a lot of range of motion in the spine that needs to be looked at and tested and investigated, particularly in the neck. I put this picture up because, one, I'm in love with it as a geek, as a nerd. I saw this picture and I never forgot it. And it's from a book that I think every horse owner should own. It's called Activate Your Horse's Core, and it's by Dr. Hilary Clayton and Narelle Stubbs. And if you don't own it, you must go now to places where this book is sold and purchase it. But what I love about it is, to me, it's not only is it a beautiful chart, but it really describes the motion of the horse's top line. You can see the neck is very mobile. And then you can also see that where the thoracic vertebrae start, the motion really sort of stops. It tapers off in a particular way. And that is really very descriptive of what the spine is doing for the horse. Okay, the spine of the horse needs to be somewhat rigid because it's primarily built for stability. One, it needs to hold up that ingesta, those 300 pounds of that gut, which is huge. And then two, it really is built to transmit these massive forces of these hind limbs that are propelling this massive animal forward. You know, at a canter, we're talking about 2,000 pounds coming through the hind limbs, and it has to lift the entire animal and push it forward. So it's got to be stable. And this is also the reason that we can ride these animals. You know, a dog, compared to the mobility of the spine of a dog or a cat, you know, it's just, anyway, I love it. I just feel like this is such a descriptive
well, and I think that this research was done by Dr. Clayton when she was over at Utrecht in the Netherlands. And for people who don't know that research, they actually used a live horse, and they marked every single vertebrae so that they could see in a live horse, because there's been research and conjecture done. Dr. James Rooney was one of my mentors actually when I was in grad school. And he'd done all these mathematical models about how the spine doesn't move, but there is movement. And as you show so beautifully in this graph, how much is in the neck, right, and how it tapers off, because so many people think the spine is about the vertebrae are about increasing movement, but you're right. My perspective is that what it's doing is really limiting movement to protect the spinal cord, because if that gets impinged, we're in huge trouble.
Right. And the other thing that it's doing, and actually I'm going to get to that a little later in this presentation, is there's a really intricate, important muscular contraction sequence. It's like a dance of stabilizing muscle that has to work first, and then long contracting movement muscle. And that dance gets interrupted. And when it gets interrupted, really bad things happen.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to that in a minute. We're going to get into the juicy stuff about the back in a minute. Yeah, and so this brings me to another point about the spine. The spine and lameness are really, they're so interconnected, okay? The spine is the bridge between the front and the hind limbs, and lameness and back problems have this special relationship. 32% of lame horses have back pain, right? And 74% of horses with back problems are also lame. Now, what's huge to me, like that's Landman et al. And I recently learned that from a really interesting lecture that was taught by Dr. Andrew Fisk Jackson. So he's works at the, I think the Royal Veterinary College, but he's a back surgeon, and put together a really great presentation on it. But what I think is really kind of scary about that, or makes me go, ooh, oh goodness, is the 74% of horses with back problems that are also lame might be these horses that I work with a lot who get treatment for lameness in a pelvic limb or a thoracic limb, and they don't, their treatment response is poor, right? They're getting treatment for a leg lameness and they continue to be lame because realistically their primary issue is a back problem. But then one of the problems that I run into is back lameness is it's very hard for anybody to diagnose. It's hard to get the technology in the field where we need it. Hard to get the diagnostics out into the field where we need it, because back lameness can be subtle. Pelvic limb lameness can be subtle. So this is something that just kind of gets me thinking, you know, I know we have a lot of horses that, that I think, you know, are people too. This happens in human medicine or any kind of medicine where there are multiple issues that overlap, and maybe sometimes poor outcomes are because we need to hit the target a little closer. So
well,
anyway.
and then you have the horses that are so stoic that
yes,
you have all kind, and so it's not even as simple as being able to diagnose it, but it's like some people go, I'm
right.
fine, I'm fine. And then you look on x-ray and they're, broken
Right.
leg. And other horses, and I've had that, where that, a tiny little thing and the horse is throwing itself on the ground and it's dying.
Right.
And so
by no means do I mean that as a criticism of diagnosticians. What I mean is that
I think is what
no.
I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the lameness locator?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The inertial sensors. Yeah, absolutely. And that is a piece of technology that's getting us a lot closer.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that it's so difficult, the horse is such a special animal, and because they're so good at, they have the rigid back theory, and they're so good at transferring loads and hiding lameness, and they're really good at shifting it around and making it difficult for people, even with really sensitive technology sometimes, to find where it's hurting them. But yeah. Anyway, so range of motion in thoracic and pelvic limbs. So this is something that your farrier does all the time. And actually, this is another example of a lay person who actually in your horse's life is probably actually really, really sensitive and really good at understanding where your horse's joints are less mobile and not so great, because farriers pick up a few thousand legs every year. And when we bring the hind leg forward to dress the front of it, we're actually doing a range of motion test. Normal range of motion for horses would be to bring the tip of the hind foot up to the back of the carpus. A lot of horses can't do that for a number of reasons, right? So that would be kind of a fail of that normal range of motion test. For a thoracic limb, one of the range of motion tests would be to bring the foot to fold the carpus back and touch the sole of the foot to the olecranon or the elbow. And many horses can't do that because of maybe, I don't know, osteophytes or arthritis in the fetlock or in the carpus, okay? So there are things like that horse owners could do in the field to learn something about their own horse and say, wow, I should call the vet and have this worked up, right? Because if I could get some care for my horse now before this arthritis escalates, or if I could do something for him shoeing wise, it would help now. Anyway, so these are important range of motion tests that I do on horses. Then I get into,
and can we go back to that for a second? Because I think you bring
Sure.
up such a great point about this.
Yeah.
That, if you're going to pick up your horse's feet to clean them, as opposed to just trying to get the job done, it's an opportunity to even just kind of check to test the edges, if you will.
Yes.
And I think that it's such a missed opportunity that when we're doing our, cleaning out our horse's feet, to just take 5 seconds, 15 seconds to just do a tiny bit like you're describing, because I think most people wouldn't even realize that their horse can't do this test.
Right.
Absolutely.
And the thing is, your horse's distal limbs are some of the fragile points on, the fragile points on the body, the feet and the distal limbs. Okay. And these things, you need to watch them like a hawk and take care of them. And these are simple things that you don't have to have an advanced degree to learn how to just feel the back of your horse's legs, to bend them and flex them. And then to do some simple maintenance on them is not that hard either. So, it's just nice to know some of these things.
Yeah. And Linda's pointing out in the comments here that, if the horse owner is just feeling a difference can can be a heads up. But if we put just a little more conscious attention to when we pick up the feet,
absolutely,
to notice, it's an opportunity.
Absolutely. It's an opportunity for equine welfare. Absolutely.
Yes. Yep.
Because if you miss it and you let it go on for, in a species that only lives maybe 30 years, a year or 6 months is a lot longer for them in their life. than it is for us. So it's really important. And then talking about muscles. So once I move past the joint sort of assessment, then I'm going to move on to muscles. And, the first thing I look for is, I look for a lot of different things with muscles, right? There's multiple tiers. Okay. But I look for muscles that are tight, areas where they develop knots, things that feel ropey, fibrous patches that could cause pain. And then I'm going to help horses by, through massage, manual manipulation of tissue to kind of loosen and soften areas. And this is a subtle thing that you learn to do kind of as a therapist, and it takes time to develop your sensitivity with your hands. Then I can recommend some stretching, some massage that the owner can do, because massage is really a technique that needs repetition, weekly repetition, I feel, to have a real effect. And then we have problems like of underdevelopment of musculature, muscle laxity. A really common example of this in horses that have a particular type of conformation, like a very straight leg, would be sticky stifles, or something as subtle as what's called intermittent upward fixation of the patella. Okay, so this is something where the horse really doesn't have to be like locking or hitching or anything that dramatic. One of my friends who's a veterinarian, I work with her frequently, she diagnoses this just by looking through the ultrasound probe and noticing there's a lot of effusion around the stifle. So she can tell that it's catching just on a hair's breadth ever so often. And the owner will say, but my horse is fit, I ride all the time. And what the horse can do if it's got a particular leg conformation is kind of circumduct the limb and avoid really flexing the pelvic limb. So they're not really using those quadricep muscles to lift the patella. And then the medial patellar ligament is getting strummed over that trochlear ridge of the femur. And we have this intermittent upward fixation of the patella. So then I come on board and come out and create an exercise protocol for that horse. One of the things I want to talk about when creating an exercise protocol, I don't just like open a book and hand somebody a protocol for a horse. That is not good therapy. That is not good. Different people and different horses have a different conformation. So I have to come out and actually look at the pole height, pole length, and set it for that individual animal to make sure that when they are stepping over the poles, I'm actually inducing a good pelvic limb action, but also that I'm inducing a nice thoracolumbar lifting of the trunk of the horse too.
So we're talking about some cavaletti work, right?
Yes.
Okay, when you said pole, I went to the wrong place.
Oh, what were you thinking? What were you thinking?
Like pole, horse's pole, it's long. No, wait, she's talking about
the pole.
Yeah.
You were thinking the pole.
Yeah. English language, right? English
language.
Human
language. No, poles. I was thinking, poles on the ground. So we'll do like some unridden walk work with poles, but poles have to be set very individually for that horse, because different, like a pony that's 13.2, and depending on their conformation, I can't just hand them a protocol. I have to come out and actually work with that horse, set the bands that I might be using TheraBands on their body. So anyway, that's a whole other subject, but just to be clear, you cannot just hand someone a protocol or look up a protocol online. That is not good therapy for managing.
So in other words, what we're talking about is when you're working with a client, you go out and you assess that particular
that's right.
Because of their conformation and because of their muscle deficiency or excess, and make a designed program. But this is what, and it's so, in some ways it's so sad. We know this for people. This has been done for people forever. And fortunately we're starting to get there, but we have to look at the horse in the same way that we look at a person in terms of this therapy.
Right.
To optimize it, it needs to be individualized. That just running the same program, that's what I hear you saying. Running the same program for every single horse doesn't work, especially
it could be damaging. Like, for example, just walk pulls. Let's think just walking pulls, right? There are some in horse riding, like I used to teach riding instruction, right, during college, just to kind of pay the bills or whatever. And we have these set pull links that we learn as trainers, right? It's 4 feet for can't trot or 3.5 feet for walk, or I can't remember it exactly right now, right? And we learned that for a standard horse, and we adjusted a little bit. But when we're talking about therapeutic exercise protocols, we might be putting belly bands on horses, and then we're really doing something very different, right? We're trying to induce a physical therapeutic result. So in between different horses, I'm going to be changing those lengths, and then I have to watch how the horse's trunk lifts, because just moving the pulls a little bit might induce the horse to actually hollow the back when they lift over the pole. Sounds like, oh, I can't believe that would really happen. Well, it really does.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I leave that client to their own devices, I might come out and have a horse that just spent 5 weeks hollowing their back, arching their back, and cranking their leg up, and actually harming their body. So anyway, that's a whole other, probably a whole lecture just on that. But I just want to make the point that do not look up stifle rehab protocol. Get a actual therapist to come out and work with your horse. Don't just buy equibands and put them on your horse. You need a real therapist to come out and help you. Muscle hypertonicity, okay, or spasticity. This is where a muscle group has become overtaxed because it's been used to cope, to help with pain. Navicular horses in particular are going to have a very sort of blown out brachiocephalicus muscle. I usually know these horses from like 100 yards away, right? Someone calls and says, my horse has been diagnosed with navicular. And when I walk up to the horse, I can see these huge overdeveloped neck muscles, and a big U-neck. And when you touch these horses down here, they react and pull back. And that's because when horses have a bilateral forelimb lameness, they have nowhere to limp. And so they have to brace up the underside of their neck. And horses can very successfully regulate the forces that come down through their forelimbs with their neck muscles. And you think about it, this is the guiding principle behind head down sound, head down sound. When they are mitigating the vertical displacement, so they're just regulating it with these forelimb musculature, and these horses will be so raw and sore. So when I'm involved in that case, and I don't mind if I'm shoeing them, fine. If I'm not shoeing them, fine. But either way, both of these pain points have to be taken care of. Both rehabilitations have to be taken care of. The feet have to be repaired, and the neck and the whole back and hind quarters of the horse have to be cared for.
And, I always talk about the fact that that's from Hillary's work. On a 1,000-pound horse, that's a 40-pound head at the end of a 3-foot lever arm. And from simple physics, if you're going to displace the 40-pound weight by using the lever arm, if something's uncomfortable. So it makes sense that you see a particular muscle pattern with a particular issue, because horses are masters at compensation. That's what they do.
They have to do it. I mean, think about it. If they show anybody that they're in pain, the predator's going to get them. And it's really heartbreaking once you really start to unwind them, because, when they finally sort of show you, they relax, do that deep breathing, you think, oh, buddy. Now this, by the way, this is actually a healthy horse. He was my horse. I owned him and I just taped him up for the demonstration. But this is a muscle test that, actually a lot of people could actually learn to do. Normal rounding response, if you sort of gently take up tissue slack on these horses, they'll sort of round, and that's healthy response. If you gradually take up tissue here and they really pull back, and then you look at that with other data points, right? It's not a singular data point, but if you look at it amongst many other data points, like really bad caudal foot, images or something like that, it might be something that would tip you off that that a horse might have caudal foot pain, right? You might want to get it to a doctor.
We do have some questions from one
sure.
particular person, but it's very specific to her horse. And I think the bigger question that's more important here is, because she's asking what kind of rehab to recommend, but of course you can't recommend rehab without actually seeing the horse.
Yeah.
But she's wondering, is there a way to find other animal physical therapists? She's in Ontario.
Yes, there are. I think the Animal Rehab Institute has on their website, they have a list of practitioners, and there may be one that is closer to you, like, that we can explore. But I can try to, I don't have that answer right now, but I can try to get that for you, for her, maybe at the end, and we can try to get her that information to get her a therapist.
Right. And I think that you probably have some resources at the end we can talk about, but
Sure.
I just discovered the question. So I was like, oops.
Yeah, no, of course. And of course,
not doing my job. I was listening to you too well.
Yeah, no, but of course, if there's a horse out there that needs some help, of course, we want to get that person that help, of course.
Exactly. Great. Okay.
So then the next kind of muscle issue that I want to talk about is atrophy. So there's neurogenic muscle atrophy, right? And this kind of back, that I took a photo of this horse. This is a horse that actually had neurogenic muscle atrophy because of poor saddle fit and saddle fit pain. And this is really pretty classic. Okay, this horse actually also had some underlying overriding dorsal spinous process stuff, which actually it sounds really scary, but in a lot of ways to me, it's not so much a bugaboo because it's so very common. That sounds, I hate to say it that way, but it's so, it's very common finding. And in some horses, many horses, it's just an incidental finding. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, it's there, it isn't painful. And in this horse's case, we were sort of up in the air. Is it the kissing spine that's painful, or was it that this saddle fit was really poor? And so we didn't know. Either way, it was irrelevant. We were going to do a full back rehab on this horse, and we did. But this is a really great example of it. It looks like the horse has a hole in its back, really right where the saddle was.
Well, I was going to say, you can literally see the outline of the saddle on this horse. I mean, from behind the shoulder to the panels to where it's coming right up against the spine. I mean, it's like there's an imprint. And for people that haven't looked, you start looking when you look at horses without their saddles on, because this is not an uncommon thing to see the saddle still on the horse, if you will.
Very common. And by the way, I have to say the horse owner was heartbroken. This was truly a person who did not know. Okay, she thought her horse was losing weight because of another problem. She just thought her horse was like skinny, and she was trying very hard. She was so devastated when she realized. Okay, so that's another point, is that many times people just don't have the information. It's not that they don't love their horse. It's not that they weren't trying to fix it. Many times people are someone gave them the advice, or they read something online, or it's that people don't have the evidence-based information. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. We've got to get evidence-based information out to people. So this is neurogenic muscle
education, because I agree I call it benign ignorance. They're not intending to go out and hurt their horse.
No,
they just don't have the information that they need to make wise choices.
Right.
And
we are the horse industry. I hate to say it, but we are a folklore-based kind of industry. My daddy did it this way. My grandpa did it this way. You better feed that horse this, and it's just nonsense. So in any event, I want people to know what this is. This is pure neurogenic muscle atrophy, and it's very common in horses because they're ridden. And when horses are ridden and they don't really have, and it somehow is painful for them, either due to saddle fit or due to them not having the muscle development for it, or let's say they have overriding dorsal spinous process, whatever the pain reason is, it's pain that starts it. Okay. And then the muscle activity around the lesion, whatever's causing the pain point, changes. And Dr. Nicole Rombach actually explained it in this way that I think is really beautiful and simple. So I just repeat what she says because she did it so well. And I thought, oh,
Awesome. Plagiarism is a form of flattery, right? As long
I'm
as
just going to do it. Yeah, because she did it so well. So and this horse has such a, he's a great demonstration. So it's like, let's use this moment to be a good demonstration. So he has, there are muscles closest to the spine, like the multifidus, and they are pennate in shape. Pennate meaning they're short, kind of like this. They crisscross the vertebrae, and they line the vertebrae, and they're stabilizing muscles. And she calls them type 1 muscles. And that's probably what they're called. Type 1 muscles, and they're stabilizing, and they contract first before horses move. And their job is to stabilize that spine. Okay. And then there are these long back muscles, and we all know what the long back muscles, because when you're running your hand down your horse's back, that's what you're feeling, that longissimus dorsi. Okay. And it extends into the medial glute, and then the trapezius runs over it. And it's just beautiful. This horse is totally missing that muscle, right? It's completely wasted. So then that muscle starts to move, and that causes the long, like undulating motion of the back. Okay. So when the horse has pain like this, what happens is the muscle contractility, the neuromuscular contractions of those stabilizing muscles start to stop and malfunction. Okay. Because there's a painful lesion. And so they start to loosen, trying to avoid the area of pain. The horse is hollowing its back. And so now what happens is the long back muscles start to have to do double duty. They have to brace to kind of stabilize, and then they have to kind of move the back. And now we have total dysfunction of movement, and we have total dysfunction of the muscles. And over time, they're overtaxed, they're spastic, and then they waste. And it's very sad. It's very sad. Okay. But the good news about it, and one of the reasons I don't, even though it makes people really sad and scared and everything to find out about it, I don't get that sad about it, because these horses tend to go back to work. I think there was a statistic that Dr. Andrew Fisk-Jackson was talking about, where something like 91% of horses, if they have this kind of thing with just due to like overriding dorsal spinous processes, if they do like a 6-week unridden rehab and we get them on core conditioning, et cetera, most of them go back to work. Okay. Maybe not like, they're going to go on and do huge performance, but a lot of them, I have horses that routinely we can rehabilitate their back and get their muscles to come back. Okay. So we can get rid of this skeletal look to their back. Okay. And we do that by changing their saddle fit. Obviously, we really get a whole new saddle. We do a lot of massage. We do, this really nice unridden exercise. We do a lot of walking over poles. We do a lot of thoracolumbar lifting if that's possible. Obviously the horse is going to have a full spinal ultrasound, and all the diagnostics are going to be done, so we know where movement is possible. But through all of the good work of people like Hillary Clayton, Narelle Stubbs, all these people that have done all this incredible research, we just start implementing all these beautiful tools they've created, and they work. They really work. So it's not something to be afraid of. I think a lot of people, one of the things I've always tried to figure out is, one of the things I run into in the business is sometimes people sort of avoid going to the vet first, or avoid getting the diagnostics first. They'll kind of call different practitioners or call different people and don't want to really look inside, get the x-rays and the ultra. That's always what I want first, I think they're afraid that it can't be fixed, but many times things can be improved, and really, but we have to tackle the reality first, And
I think, somebody's just making a comment how things like this can lead to even laminitis, that one problem can lead to another when it's not addressed. But one of the things
Snowballs.
I think that we have to also recognize is that there's a lot of people that don't have access to really good vet clinics that have the kind of diagnostic tools that they really need. You know, with some of these things, you need an MRI. I mean, to sort it out, right? And those are rare,
Yeah.
right? I'm not saying that that's always the case, but
you're right. You know what I was going to say? I think that obviously a back like that back or whatever, I think most veterinarians would probably be able to tell that
yes,
was
in that kind of case. But
right.
you know, there is an
I know what you're saying. It is a problem. It is a problem. We have some people in rural areas who cannot get to the care that they need, and so that's an even more important reason why education of the horse owner is so important. And so there have to be more avenues for that. And I think your webinar is one of them. Like, how can we get people to have access to the information that they need? And this is a great venue for that. But in any event, I want to keep moving to the positive. Absolutely. And that is that these things can be repaired, and that the lower limbs of the horse and the feet can be repaired. And so I want to talk about that too. Like, I'm glad we're doing so much on the body, but I have so much stuff on feet.
I know,
you guys. We got to get to feet. So I talked about the core conditioning. This is dressage. This is me on my thoroughbred, who he and I got through 3rd level, and then he sat me down and told me that he met this older woman that he fell in love with and wanted to go live with. And he didn't want to do 3rd level. He wanted to do like 1st level. And it broke my heart, but I told him, you know what, buddy, I love you. If you want to go live with her, you got to do it. So anyway. Oh, another big feature when I'm giving training protocols, and actually when I'm shoeing horses, is laterality. You need to know, if you're a horse owner, you need to know the laterality of your horse, because the laterality of your horse, meaning which direction they prefer to work in and their body balance, it's a big component of their neurology. It is unchangeable, and it will affect the shape of their body parts, and it will dramatically affect the shape of their feet. And it's gonna, if you understand it, you're gonna stop having a lot of like arguments and confusion, maybe with your farrier, with your trainer, and with your horse. You're gonna have a lot more compassion and empathy for your horse if you understand his natural balance. There are different ways to describe laterality. For me, I use the one that was the description that was created by Dr. Carrie Ridgway, because for me as a rider and as a trainer and a therapist, it just makes sense to me. And as a farrier, it makes sense to me with what I see with feet. And that is that horses like to keep their dominant forelimb underneath their body. So a great way to think about this would be, if you're a right-handed person, I'm right-handed, and if I were falling forward, I would sort of want to catch my trunk weight with my right hand. So most horses, I think there's been a number of papers on this. Dr. Simon Curtis has talked about it, lectured about it. I agree with it. With my 30 years I've been around horses. Most of them canter better to the left, or it's more pleasurable to ride them to the left. And that's because their right forelimb is on the outside of the circle, supporting their trunk, carrying your weight. This is a picture actually of my horse cantering to the left. And if he were a left forelimb dominant horse, he would be very happy cantering to the right, because you can see he's supporting all of my weight. And
he's cantering to the right on my picture. Is that correct?
Yes, he's cantering to the right on your picture. But this is just an illustration. Like, let's imagine that if he were cantering to the right and he were left forelimb dominant, he would be happy in this picture, right? So that's the idea. Can I just
say one thing to kind of help people with the understanding of laterality?
Sure.
You know, if you're, as a person, if you're walking over something that's unsteady, and I build this balance trail with a Surefoot pad, so I've watched this for quite a while now. You're going to step forward with your non-dominant leg. In other words, you're going to keep stable on the leg that you feel secure on. And it's the leg you move forward that you're willing to explore with. So you're going to stay on the secure leg.
Great explanation.
Yep. And
Great
that's
explanation.
what we're seeing here. Yep.
Because I think people confuse the lead leg with the dominant leg.
Right.
And there's also, they confuse loading with dominance. And that was, I did a post a while ago that actually then me and Tammy, my good friend Tammy Alkiam, did a whole, Tammy and I put this post, but I don't know if you remember this next slide about these feet. I said, which one of these feet is the dominant foot? And I think it got, oh my God, it kind of went crazy, but this is a really classic presentation. This is the top one is a right foot. I've mirrored the image of this left foot so that they look more similar, but this is a very classic presentation. This is a right forelimb, and this is the dominant foot, and it usually will have a slightly higher heel. And that is created not by the Farrier error, that is created by the tissues, the internal tissues, and it's also created by the range of motion of that limb over time. Okay, and so this is the internal tissues are different, and also the leg tissues are different. There are 17 tendons and ligaments inside this lower leg that have all adjusted to this length. And so people will come and say, oh, well, the Farrier just needs to whack this heel off and then these, or bump this heel up and then, this will be fine. Well, that would not work. You would really lame this horse if you did that to his heel.
So to be clear, the dominant limb there is the picture on top?
Yes.
Okay.
That is the right front foot of a right dominant horse. There are left dominant horses, but there are fewer of them. Most horses are right forelimb dominant. I mean, most people report that it is easier to ride your horse to the left. It's harder to ride them to the right. They kind of fall in on the right.
So someone's asking, she says, horses love to stand on the dominant leg. Will the dominant foot then not be the lower heel because it's more loaded?
Right. And this is where people confuse loading with dominance, right? So what happens over time, and actually ladies, if women are watching this, you can do this in your own house. Go and so like I'm right footed. So you would think that when I was standing somewhere that I would put maybe 50-50 down each leg, but I don't. I put actually more weight down my left leg, even though I'm right forelimb dominant. And because of the mechanics, and Tammy and I actually did a whole webinar on this that we realized we needed to break into like maybe 3 or 4 different webinars, but there's something that will then happen because of the way the legs are used differently. And actually Dr. Carrie Ridgway wrote an entire paper on this, which is in Pete Ramey's book, Care and Rehabilitation of the Horse. He wrote an entire paper on why the right foot, it becomes the higher heel and the left front then becomes the lower heel. But essentially, the horse ends up kind of slamming down onto the leading leg, causing a lower heel. And then when they stand, and ladies, if you have a kitten heel at home or a high heel, put a high heel on one of your feet, on your dominant foot, and then you'll notice like you're not going to want to hang out with all your weight on the higher heel. You're going to put it on the lower foot, but you're still going to have a dominant leg. So it's a complicated thing. It involves some complicated neurology, some complicated understanding of how your spine will end up rotating. But
well, and I think one of the things that's helpful is that the majority, and I'll talk about people just because I think it's a little bit to relate to, the majority of people are diagonally dominant. In other words, if you're right-handed, it's your left leg that's the leg you depend on. And and when you think about mucking a stall, you're doing a diagonal movement, you're standing securely on your left leg and you're, pitching your fork. And very few people are actually laterally dominant. whereas the
Right.
same side, hand and leg. And those people typically stop riding pretty quickly because they're constantly falling off, because if the horse does something, they go to the dominant lateral side and they fall off because
Oh,
they
I didn't
grab on
know that.
Mhm. But if you're
Wendy, that's
diagonally dominant,
fascinating.
yeah, diagonally dominant, you're going to secure yourself on the diagonal leg. So right hand, left leg, the left leg, right hand is going to help keep you on the horse. And I've teaching riding for as long as I have, you can start to hear the laterally dominant people because they've injured everything on the same side of their body.
Oh, Wendy, that's really fascinating. I'm gonna have to like have an entire phone conversation with you about that. Is really fascinating.
And when we look at horses, most horses are they trot, they're diagonal dominant, right?
Right.
And that
Kind of like people.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that you get your pacers that are laterally dominant, but the majority, right?
That's why I don't understand them. I ride them and I'm like, ah!
Yeah, because they're laterally dominant because that's how they pace. And so it would make sense that if just dominance and load are not equivalent.
They're not the same thing.
It would be interesting to look at the diagonal hind to that dominant leg and see what's going on. But that's, and I know you see
they're usually mirrored.
Yes.
Unless there's a lameness.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it gets you, that's a whole, we can digress because of the.
No, we could go. So Linda, just to recap, so the dominant leg only load more in action. If the standing on the less dominant creates the loading. I'm a little confused.
Well, it's interesting. It's kind of the way that it manifests in the legs can kind of get infinitely more bizarre, right? Because then you're going to add in things like injury, then you're going to add in things like additional stuff. But if we're just talking purely neurology, there's no other factor. Most horses, and farriers will tell you this, I don't know a horse that has two identical front limbs. They always have one front limb that is slightly more upright and one front limb that is slightly lower. And that leads me to this slide, which is also just, my point is just that I want horse owners to understand your horse's feet are not pieces of wood. And I know people know that, but please, it's so tempting to think that way, to think, why can't my farrier just cut that extra 6 millimeters off? And it's because there are just a very few millimeters of keratin coating this soft tissue and this bone. And this is an image, this is the same horse. Okay, and this is also from Care and Rehabilitation of the Equine Foot. Ivy Ramey and Pete Ramey gave me permission to use these photos. Thank you for letting me use these photos to help educate people. I really am grateful. This is a right forelimb picture, the top horse here, and you can see he has a much more upright coffin bone. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a different shape to P3. This is a different orientation of these bones. There are collateral ligaments to the navicular bone. This low foot, this is a drastically different shape to this coffin bone. There is bone remodeling here that's gone on. Your farrier is not missing the point. Like, your farrier gets the point. And I think this is something that people, I think we have a culture about the way we think about farriers and talk to farriers sometimes that needs to shift. And, so
if I could just kind of recap what I think I'm hearing you saying is that asymmetry is normal.
Yes.
And that we can't go to symmetry if the horse is structurally asymmetric, because we're going to wreck them.
You're going to hurt them.
Right.
So you will hurt them.
And I see this all the time. We're fed anatomy as this rigid structure instead of that it's my favorite phrase from John Zahorik is individual variation. That each one of us is different. And while the textbooks show us that this is what it's supposed to look like, we really have to honor the fact that everybody's different. I love Pam Eckelberger's Equisoma, because they have shown us bones where the horses had like thoracolumbar vertebrae and all these different, not what we would call normal.
Absolutely. And that's actually something that Tammy and I, like my good friend Tammy, when we do our 12-minute videos, we're on a mission. We have this thing, the myth of symmetry.
Yeah.
This myth of symmetry is being used to sell horse owners all kinds of things, telling them that people can make their horses symmetrical. And it's just, I mean, the lighthearted part of me is like, okay, that you can't do it, but whatever. The bad part of that is you can very much hurt horses' feet and like you could very much lame a horse telling somebody that you can just cut their heels off or lift one heel or something. So we have to be careful. And the way that we're careful is by telling horse owners, there's nothing wrong with this horse. That's the other thing you have to understand. He's not pathological. He's not diseased. He's not damaged. He's just a horse. And this is normal morphology. So yeah, this is my next slide. Asymmetry is the norm. Biological structures from flowers to fish to humans are not perfectly symmetrical. This is not a pathology. And it's due to these inherent and complicated neurological factors like laterality. And there is no cure. So we're just going to manage it. And we also have to talk about what is normal. And I think, Wendy, you just said it so well that, you know, that I always say this, that biology exists in a bell curve. It doesn't matter whether you're measuring butterfly wings or a particular kind of conch shell or a particular, or horses. Horses are just another species, okay? If you plot all of them, they're gonna come out in a bell curve. And if you look at the middle of this bell curve, everybody in towards the middle is probably totally functional. Mm-hmm. It's only when you get out to the outer curves that we're into aberrant animals. So this is kind of what, when I, you know, I get into, you know, sort of, I get into a little trouble here because a lot of people get on my case and say, well, if you tell everybody that their horse is that it's a little bit crooked and that it's okay, then you're saying that we don't have to fix things. No, please don't misunderstand. I work all day, every day, fixing horses with pathology and helping horses that need management of dysfunctional body parts and need support, you know, early support of conformation that may cause a problem later. So I'm right there with you. I just don't think it's helpful or productive to tell everybody that if their horse is a little crooked or a little different, that they're not functional or that they're somehow not healthy. They're healthy. They're okay. They're just, if they're somewhere on the scale of functional. If they're club-footed or have a negative palmar angle, then we need to do something. So hooves.
Yay.
Yay. The best part. Oh my gosh. Hooves. Oh. You know, I have to say, if you are a horse person and you have not become addicted to hooves yet, you've got to come on board. They're so interesting, so beautiful, so fun. Hooves are the foundation of your animal. You know, where once when I was a kid, I might have really loved the way a horse's face looked when I was purchasing one. I no longer hardly even look at the horse's face. I want to stare at their feet, measure their feet. The horse's hoof is the primary energy dissipation system, and we're going to talk about it. There's a lot of energy that has to be dissipated in these giant animals, and these feet have to do it. Okay. Dr. Bowker says it's the primary neurosensory organ, and it influences the balance and coordination of the body. And these problems and pathologies in the foot are going to affect the whole horse. I want to talk about a concept that I don't think really gets enough airtime. It was taught to me by one of my mentors, Mike Savaldi. Okay, Mike Savaldi is a professor. He was a professor emeritus at Cal Poly Pomona. He has done a few thousand dissections. He's been shoeing horses for over 50 years. He was a professor at Pomona for 30 years, and he has created this theory of the solar arch. And The solar arch is really just what most of us think of as the soul of the horse, the soul body. And through his dissections and explorations, he has really come to think of the soul as an arch in the foot, just like we have an arch in our foot. And if you look at this picture here, you can see where he has done a dissection of this foot, pulled apart the bone from the sole, and he's noticed that there were areas of soft tissue damage in the same regions where there was bone remodeling on the coffin bone. And his theory is really that the arch of the coffin of the foot over time sustains damage just from wear and tear, just from normal pounding the pavement of the horse, because there's huge forces going through the foot. And without sole reinforcement or arch support, the sole can collapse, and that remodeling can happen to the pedal bone. And by the time the horse is lame, we tend to refer to this as navicular. Okay. This is a really beautiful slide that he's created, and we obviously could spend, this could be an entire lecture just on its own, but this was a quick snapshot of these dissections that he's done. The top panel, the very top, it says this is an ideal arch where the pedal bone is really riding high inside the capsule. And we do know that pedal bones all have a different sort of vault underneath them, a different arch shape, okay? Some are flatter and some are higher and cuppier, okay? But if you look at the ideal arch, you look at the bottom of the coffin bone, there's really no damage. If you look at the area that says weak toe arch, and then you look at how the pedal bone was damaged in the toe region, you can see the toe arch collapsed. That would be sort of like you would think about clubfoot horses or horses that had suffered with laminitis, right? They would be horses that had the toe arch collapsed in this theory. Horses that had just the whole sort of middle of the arch collapse, they were going to have damage in the region of the bar. Okay. And then horses with a weak heel arch, these would be our negative palmar angle horses, okay, our caudal failure horses. And these horses tend to get a lot of remodeling to the wings of the coffin bone and a lot of arthritis into the lateral cartilages. Is this slide kind of making sense? It's kind of a lot.
There's a lot of information in here.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here like
Yes.
to crawl into my computer to.
Yes.
I think what I'm gathering from this slide is that when we have particular pathologies, we can see an equivalent in the damage to the sole tissues.
Yes. Yes.
And so you're showing us here three different types of, it says pill. Is that, oh no, it's P3. Okay, it's P3. Yeah. I was like, what's pill?
Yeah.
Okay, now I got it, P3, because I was not seeing that they were all capitalized. So that makes more sense to me. And so depending on, we would have to think that it's forces causing these. In other words, yes, exertion of force that's causing the arch to be weak, and we can see the concomitant degeneration to P3, say in the top one, the weak arch toe area.
Yes.
So we can, I think what he's trying to tell us here is that the sole and the arch and the P3 damage, it matches.
Yes. That's it, Wendy. You got it.
Yep.
You got it. Okay. And so what he's saying is then that and we're going to talk about the forces in a minute, right? It isn't rocket science. Okay. The horse's legs are a miracle of bioengineering. And I got that quote from Dr. Renee Weller. She gave this incredible talk to, she's from the RVC. She gave this lecture and I've watched it like 5 times because I just loved it so much. But we have to remember, and I think we forget because horses are so graceful, they're so magnificent, they look like they're floating, but just at the walk for a 1,000-pound horse, they have 500 pounds going through that tissue. And we're talking about a few millimeters of keratin, a few millimeters of soft tissue sole, and then the bone. 500 pounds, okay, every time they take a walk step. And then when we go to the trot, it's 1,500 pounds. And then when we go to the gallop or jumping, it's, 2.5 times their body weight. So that's like 2,500 pounds. And that is the equivalent of taking a mid-sized car, and that's why I put that up there, and smashing it onto the horse's front leg. I really want people to visualize that when they think of their baby, their horse. I want you to think about picking up a Prius and smashing it onto the tissues of your horse's front leg. That's what you're doing when you're jumping or running or cantering around to your horse's front feet. And so for people, I just want to stress the point. You need to pay very close attention to your horse's feet. Very close attention. It is the most valuable, fragile thing on your horse's body in some ways. And then in other ways, it's the toughest, most amazing structure on your horse's body.
And I don't think you're advocating that we don't ride, because I can hear some people going, oh my goodness, I should not. No,
I ride. I'm just saying we forget.
Yeah.
My point is we forget. The horse makes it look so simple. The horse makes it look like, it's just so easy. And we get so casual. But what I'm saying as a farrier and as a horse advocate is we need to be taking annual farrier films. That's what I'm on a mission to advocate for here. Okay. Because if we're going to love our horses, just like we get an annual dental for our horses, right? Because our horse's mouth is important. Just like we get an annual saddle check, get an annual set of farrier films. We need to check out what's going on in here, because this horse is a miracle. It's there's no other animal on the planet that can do this, by the way. Ostriches come close, but don't cut it. The giraffe comes close, can't do it. So the horse, our most precious animal in the world, they're just incredible. We got to take care of them. And we're going to do that through farrier films. Okay. So
now can you just give us a quick definition when you say a farrier film? How does it different from any other x-ray?
I'm about to. Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, because that's exactly what somebody just said.
Yep. So I just want to make these points. So dysfunctions of the foot, and this is why they're so insidious. Okay, because that foot is so strong, your sole will start collapsing over time and you won't know it. Okay. There's also published paper. Monique has published a paper on this that Palmer, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Actually, I have a better x-ray to show you, but you'll start noticing dysfunctions of your horse's foot, things like they're not very forward. They just stop having their goiness. Okay. But these can lead to problems higher up. The energy dissipation is going to be lost. Okay, so this is why we need farrier films. Farrier films are lateral views and DP views. So that would be from the side of your horse's foot and from the front of your horse's foot. And those are films that your vet can come out and take. You don't need a lameness exam. They're not expensive. They're two views that just inform the farrier about the side view. And so you can look at toe length and heel height and palmar angle. And you can also look at the front view. And
so we're talking two views on every single foot. So we're looking at 8.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you can't, you need to do the hinds as well.
Yeah.
You got to do it once a year. I've started doing farrier film clinics where we get it just like you do a dental clinic. I get a bunch of my gal pals together. We pick a day. We get a cheaper rate. The vet comes out, shoots a bunch of horses. We get all our x-rays. They all go out to the vets. And it's fantastic.
Well, and with digital now, this is like, it was such a game changer when they came up with digital x-rays.
Yep. The other thing you can do is you can keep regular records of your own horse's dorsal hoof wall angle. I use software from Metron Hoof, which is sold through Eponamind. It's a great piece of software. Owners can use it. It's like a camera system and computer software, and it will measure everything for you. That's a great way to keep track of your horse's feet because they do change over time. But this is what we're after with Farrier films. And I just picked a lateral view. And if you're a horse owner and you just want one thing that you can understand and keep track of that's really critical, it would be the palmar and the plantar angle in your horse's foot, because you need to know what it is. I have this dream that someday all of my clients will come up to me and say, his palmar angle at his last Farrier film was X. Okay.
And can you define the difference between palmar and plantar?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So palmar angle is for the front foot of the horse. Okay. And plantar angle is for the hind foot of the horse. I'm showing these two slides are actually of both of these feet are a little bit, this hind foot is a dysfunctional foot. Okay. And I put it up here.
Palmar.
Huh?
They both say palmar.
Oh, they do. No, this one is palmar. This one is plantar.
Wait, what? Your pointer's not working. But the one that says the L in it, when you read that, it says palmar.
Oh, it does. You're right. You know what? I think I screwed that up when I was entering it into the software. But up above, if you read it up above, it says plantar. Sorry about that, people.
That's okay. I was just confused.
You were right, though. Yeah. So if you look at the foot that says negative plantar angle, negative 5.23, this is a hind foot, and this is very common, particularly on like thoroughbred breeds of horses. This is usually not painful, meaning the horse won't be lame from this, but this can cause tremendous dysfunction in your horse's pelvic limb. And this is one of the things you need to check for. And this would come up on a lateral film of a Farrier film on a hind foot. And the farrier needs to see this, and the farrier can correct it. Another point to make about this is your farrier isn't causing this. This is something else I need to make clear. Farriers usually are not causing dysfunctional foot problems like this. This has to do with innate mechanics and innate sort of tensegrity in certain breeds of horses. But it will help the farrier tremendously. If they have this film, then they can know what to do to correct it. Okay, so it's a big reason why you would want to take lateral and DP rods of your horse once a year.
And it can be so some horses, and I just having talked to a lot of farriers,
yes,
you look at the foot and you look at the radiograph and they match, and other horses it can actually seem okay, but
and it's not.
Look at the radiograph, it's not, and it can be very subtle. And I think that's the other point, is that a subtle change can make a huge difference, even if it looks good when you see the
radiograph. Yeah, there is no trusting the exterior hoof capsule.
Yeah,
there is no trusting the exterior hoof capsule, and I have learned that the hard way as a farrier. You can really a lot of people will look at negative plantar or palmar angle and try to make rules of thumb for how the exterior capsule should look. And there are some, right? Like this one from the exterior has that very classic curved look to the dorsal hoof wall, right? So that one we would be able to tell. But I've seen a dorsal hoof wall on a horse that was totally straight. I've seen one that was even sort of had a curvature to it, where you would think it was the palmar angle was too high or something. So you have to x-ray. And again, it's just, these are the most important structures on your horse's body in terms of usability of the life of your horse. If something goes wrong with these feet, so you've got to x-ray them once a year.
So someone's asking if there's a normal angle for palmar and plantar angles.
This is such a great question. There, and again, you're going to get different answers about this. What I say is that we don't have a definitive answer. What we have is a range of healthy morphology, and that can be anywhere between 3 to 8 degrees. I can only tell you I've seen healthy horses that had a lower palmar palmar angle and horses that had a higher palmar angle that were healthy. I do see trends. I do see correlations between horses that have a palmar angle that's, I would say, is too high. Out here in California, we have a lot of our navicular horses are horses that tend to have a very high palmar angle. They tend to be quarter horses. Okay, but I also see a lot of navicular horses that are thoroughbreds that have caudal foot failure and have a very low palmar angle. Like this horse here with the front leg that has a low palmar angle. That horse has a palmar angle of only 1.44 degrees. That horse was very, very lame and in caudal foot failure. And you can see actually, if you look at the back of the foot, there's a little bump that's sort of full of white packing. That's all the arch that he had left in his foot. And I'm actually going to show you later how we rebuilt his foot and how his palmar angle changed because we used some special shoeing and we documented his change with this computer software and with shoeing. But so this is,
I think, we're back to the fact that there's so much individual variation in what one horse can,
right.
be totally sound and look horrible. And I know people that have been riddled with arthritis and they're sound. And so
right.
It's good to say, but I do have another question for you that someone,
sure.
Can you speak to ensuring the proper setup for views, i.e. both feet on blocks, capturing complete views, et cetera?
Yes. So both feet need to be on blocks. You need to have the cannon bones vertical. That's very standard. So any veterinarian, who is trained in how to set up radiographs is going to set them up that way. I can tell you that when you're working with live horses, some of them can get, pretty opinionated and you're sort of lucky to get them up on the blocks. But no, we all do our best to follow X-ray protocol. And you do need to have both feet on the blocks. You need to have the cannon bones vertical. You need to have the foot picked out of debris. And actually, there's a whole way that I'm going to talk about this in a little bit because I actually use radiographs while I'm shoeing lame horses, severely lame horses, because that's actually the main focus of my practice. I only work on horses that are really, really very lame navicular horses. So, and I use radiographs usually for the first 2 or 3 shoeings while I'm shoeing. So we're gonna talk more about that in a little bit. I want to move on because I want to look at a horse with palmar angle that was high. This horse had a club foot. And actually, I didn't do the shoeing work. This was done at a clinic with my good friend, John Kenyon, who's a really beautiful metalworking shoer. I actually just ran the software and we had a vet there that was doing x-rays. And then she sent me the x-rays, which I then ran through this really terrific Metron software. And John did a before and after. So we shot this foot and measured its palmar angle, which was 8.46. So on the high side. And then John was just a tremendous farrier and such a dear friend. He did a beautiful shoeing job and actually got the palmar angle down significantly and got the mare to really feel better. So it's just an example of how when you take farrier films and you actually get real data that you can extract from them, you can measure real changes and monitor your horse's health this way. And it can be very detailed and extremely valuable. Okay, so I want horse owners to know this. This is something you can really keep track of, and it's so worth it for your horse's health.
And I think you made such a good point that, in the end, it's the horse's comfort level that really shows you're on the right track.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so this is what I want to talk a little bit about, how I use this system that was actually created by Monique Craig, but also my understanding of and why I do this kind of shoeing is based a lot in Mike Savaldi's arch, theory of the arch and arch support. And I really basically, when I work with these navicular horses, I'm doing what I believe is a rehabilitation of the arch using packing. But it's very, very delicate work. I have to be very careful because, as most farriers know, if there's farriers out there watching, packing can really go the wrong way. If you overpack a foot, you will have an animal that will just go belly up. If they have a sore sole, they will have a very hard time with it. And so packing is an art, and it's also a science. And one of the reasons that I use radiographs so heavily in my shoeing is because I want to be sure that I'm getting the horse's comfort right. So this horse, actually, this is a horse that I've worked on, and this was a final product on her for one of her first shoeings, but she's a horse that has navicular and pedal osteitis, and she has to stand on the Surefoot pads, the orange ones. We have to have 2 of them, and my associate farrier and I leave to load the Prius, the Farrier Prius. We always have to put the Surefoot pads in because we cannot do her. We have to pull one shoe, put her on the pad. But what I also like about using that tool, and it really is a tool in the shoeing process, is the mare will rotate her feet into the plane that she would like to stand on. Mm-hmm. And so it helps me with her trim because I can see the depression that she's made into the pad, and then I can know how much to trim off in her toe. So it's kind of like the horse will show me how far she'd like me to take it. Really catastrophically lame horses like this, when they come to me, I take it very seriously because I think when a horse has a foot that isn't working, there's kind of a decision that has to be made. And I feel like if we're going to try to really help this horse, then we really have to go all out. And I kind of look at their foot almost like it's almost like we're doing like the vet and I, with our care team, we're doing like an orthopedic procedure. That's how seriously I take it. And so I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful that I have veterinarians that will work with me that way. And they will come and do x-rays, because what I do is I pull shoes on the first visit. I x-ray the feet as they are. I trim some, and then I usually pack the feet, and then I x-ray and see where I'm at. And then sometimes I trim a little more. Sometimes I'll place the shoe, like I'll just elastic on the shoe on, x-ray again and see if I like it. But I really don't nail on or glue on until I really like it. And this picture over here is pretty much where I wanted that foot. I wanted the breakover precisely under the tip of P3. Her packing was where I wanted it. And you can see that I packed the shoe very flat, and I do that in a very meticulous way. Anyway, horses like this, I will do it like a procedure like that for the first 3 shoeings. And I ask the client to give me those first 3 shoeings because I've learned that within 3, I'll really know if I'm going to make a difference for the horse. And we really did. It worked out well. And I also wanted to show you this because this is an incredible piece of research science that John and Monique Craig did. It's a short video. Okay. I want you to think about how much you think P3 moves inside the capsule. Just think about it if you can visualize it for a minute, because P3, it's tissue in there, soft tissue. There is some movement of the bone. John and Monique took a cadaver limb and they took over 80 radiographs as they loaded this limb under compression. And they compared how much the pedal bone moved, both with pack, without packing. And there's still movement with packing, but essentially what they documented was that with packing, the descent of the P3 bone was really stabilized down onto the sole body. And I think that's one of the reasons we get such good results. So I'm going to play that video for you guys here, if it'll work. Oh, shoot. I don't know if it will. Oh, maybe it won't. Oh,
It should.
I don't know. Oh, here we go. Maybe it's over here. There we go. Okay, here it comes. Should. Play. Oh, please play. It's so cool.
Give it a second. It'll.
Okay.
Sometimes it needs a little time to just, like, I think you need to hit your arrow again because you might have hit it. It didn't look like it was on. Like if you go to the video, see the arrow down on the left hand? Yeah.
Yeah. Here
it doesn't look like you actually hit play though.
I did on my other screen.
Oh, I'm trying to do it.
Oh, well.
No, there you are. Now click. You're in the right spot.
I'm clicking.
Oh, rats.
Yeah, I think it's not going to let us do it. That really sucks.
Oh, well, maybe we can put the reference in the comments on the YouTube.
Yeah, we'll find a way to share it. It's terrific video.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the other thing that I wanted to show you, and this is the strength of materials. And this is, again, something that Monique Craig shared with me, a slide she created. These are the mechanical properties of keratin. And you can see here that the mechanical strength of hoof keratin is down in the middle of the graph, and plastics and elastomers are much closer to the tissue and the material strength. It's a little bit stronger than the hoof, but closer to the hoof. And then you can see aluminum and steel are way, 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 way far away in terms of stiffness. And what I've found is that for horses that have a healthier foot, a lot of robust tissue and a lot of keratin, they seem to do fine in metal. But these horses that I end up caring for that have these really raw, hot, sensitive, beat up, kind of fragile feet, they don't seem to be able to tolerate the metal as well. I think they do better in the polymer, in the plastic.
Well, and can I just say that while we're looking at some of these examples, and you clearly work on some pretty serious cases, I think for the average horse owner, the point is to never get here.
Right. Right. Don't get here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if we do our understanding of what good foot care is and maintenance and making sure that we tick all the boxes to keep the horse healthy and to keep the foot in a good way, we're not going to wind up in your door, which is actually our goal.
Right. I don't want you.
Exactly. But
or also maybe like if you're I wish that the video would have played, but one of the things I was going to say is if you understand how to pack feet or work on substrates that will pack your horse's feet, learn how to protect your horse's sole that way. You know, a natural bare foot, a wild horse's foot would have been packed with debris. So there's a lot of theory that packing is really part of the natural protection of the sole, part of the natural balancing and support of the sole.
Yeah,
so
and Dr. Valco calls that a dirt plug. Just for people who have watched his webinars, exactly. Is, you know, you pick up your foot and you pick out all that material, but that material is there doing a job.
Right.
And while we have to balance between keeping bacteria out and making sure it's healthy stuff that's in there versus stuff that's going to cause problems, but yeah.
Right. Well, I think the thing about packing, and that's another thing I think Daisy Alexis Bicking does this, and pretty much anybody that really knows how to pack. We pack these things full of antibacterial clay. Like this is, for example, this slide that I'm showing you here, this is a really beat up laminitic foot. And this is the same foot 6 months later that I used full of packing, and I had just pulled all the packing off. So I used an antifungal clay and antifungals underneath. So the kind of packing that harmful, it doesn't cause any kind of fungus or anything funky under there.
So are we talking about Artemud, just to be clear?
Yeah.
Okay, I love Artemud.
Yeah, and what I advocate for, and I actually do quite a bit of shoe consulting, right? Because I I don't need to shoe everybody's horses, right? It's not that important. It really isn't.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I really don't. And I actually love working with, other farriers. I have a blast doing it. And one of the things that I end up just sharing a lot is just how to safely pack feet, like just the sensitive way that I end up layering the graduation of very soft into firmer and firmer materials. Just some of these procedural things that I end up sharing with some people who already do great work. And a lot of them added into their metal shoeing. And
so
it goes
just out of
great.
curiosity, and this is kind of getting a little off the track of this webinar, but when you pack, are you then having to put something to keep the packing in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of times I sort of have to translate this into a metal shoeing package, because that's the only option my client can have, right? You're talking about like people in rural communities. And so I have to say, like, a lot of guys will do this kind of packing. So the exact packing material I recommend with Artemud, they'll put it underneath a pad and they'll put a metal shoe on with a bunch of breakover ground into it. And that is the best that they can get. But honest, I don't know, I don't know necessarily how the case turns out. I'm not with them, but I believe that it can be just as helpful.
Right.
In
and
certain
the
cases.
point I was just trying to make is that you've got a layer over that packing to keep
it in.
Because with Artemud, having used it a number of times, sometimes it'll stay right in there, and a week later you're still finding the clay nice and
and Artemud is very sticky and it's an incredible product. There are other clay products though, like I've used just even the Soar No More clay. That works. It'll stay in there, dries everything out. But in any event, what I wanted to talk about with the material choice, because I do think that while metal is a choice that has gotten us so far, and it's still, when I see metal horseshoes, I feel warm and fuzzy, because I think about how far they've taken the horse and what a gift they've been to the horse. But I also think that we need to make space as scientists, as modern people, for modern materials, because horses, when I look at this photo, what I think is, wow, the horse really responded to the materials. The horse's tissue on the bottom of this foot responded to the materials and really started pumping a lot of blood to the foot, and the foot rebounded. And the comfort that was provided by the polymer shoe, the metal reinforced polymer shoe, the packing. I mean, if you look at the soft tissue, that rehabilitation that we got in the heel, and then that we were able to measure it, right? I really think this is kind of where we need to go with farriery, right? That we need to bring it more into a scientific process that we can sort of show our clients, like, look, these are our results. This is what we did. And yes, it costs a little bit more, but we can really prove to you that with these methods.
Isn't the idea that you rehabilitate this foot, and then this is not what the horse has to have done every single time, because now we have a healthier foot.
Yeah. Yes, you could probably transition this horse to barefoot. She's a broodmare. Exactly. It's a rehabilitative process, and it was done in conjunction with a veterinarian. That's really what it's about. So let's see, the last thing I wanted to show you, and let's see, I don't know, maybe my video here will work.
See, let's hope.
Oh, it looked like it was doing something. Oh, come on.
That's so strange, because normally they play.
I don't know. Oh, bummer. Well, I think I'll just leave it there. My videos are not playing, but I think we kind of covered all of the topics. And thank you so much for having me and letting me sort of share a little bit of my world and what I do with horses. And I hope everything goes on.
No, it's we haven't met, and just for full disclosure, Ann and I were just chatting on Facebook. She had contacted me about something completely different, and so it was sort of secondary that I found out that she was doing farriery, and I just thought it'd be really interesting to have her as a guest. And I'm so glad, because what you've done in this webinar, Anne, is you've brought some different worlds together. And because I've had people that have talked about rehab, and I've had Sybil Mole. She's actually one of the teachers at Arlen White's place down there in Florida, and we've had other rehab people, but this is fascinating to see how you're combining that rehab as a farrier with the foot care. And again, it's a small world, because it keeps circling back to, sort of a core group of people that are all moving in a like-minded way toward advancing our knowledge and our abilities in the same direction. I didn't realize that you knew Monique so well, or or any.
Monique is family. She's like a mentor of mine, and just someone I admire. I mean, she's one of these women that just she's an intellectual giant.
I'm just bowled over. When I listened to her webinar that night, I was like, I'm wondering how many people will have followed, but it's so nice to have the information out there. And I think that's what this is so nice to see, that you're you've brought in your skills from different places and are moving it forward again. And if you just unshare your screen, we can wrap this up. But
okay.
For me, the piece, and I just love that you talked about this in the end, because I've been using Artimud for a long time, but now I'm thinking about, I have this one particular horse. I have 3 horses that I've been trimming myself, and one of them that was laminitic that I've been working on now for 9 months. But I'm still not happy. And now I think what I need to do is pack those feet and find a way to keep that Artimud in there for a bit longer to help it recover. And I have some ideas already in the back of my head of how to do this, because I love Artimud and I've seen what it can do, but it just makes me think more. And that's, personally, I have to say that for anybody that's been watching these webinars, I have been using a lot of the information gathered. I knew that because that's why I invited them on the show, or I'm gathering information and I'm employing it with my own horses. And to see how things are working. And it's just, this is great. I always love getting another, somebody's asking what's packing. Packing is putting a material into the horse's foot, similar to what the dirt plug would be, only with Artimud is a great product that Daisy Bicking introduced me to. Is antimicrobial. It's got some zinc oxide in there.
It's a clay. Yeah,
clay. Artimud.
Just to be clear, I use that as an antifungal, but then the kind of packing that I place in actually has different durometers, right?
Oh, cool.
And some of it actually has rebounding.
You know what? We need to talk about some other things that I'm working on. Maybe we can send you some prototypes.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I would love that. Absolutely.
With our Surefoot materials, we've been working on some prototypes for different things. I don't want to say a whole lot about it here, but maybe I'll get in touch with you and you'll send you some, because we're having really good results. But essentially, I think what we're doing is we're creating a kind of packing.
Love it. I love that.
Okay. After this webinar, I'll get in touch with you. I'll get your address, or just message me your address, and okay, enough. So it's been a pleasure. And if people want to learn more about you, you have a website, right?
Yes, I have a website. It is equine-rehab.com. And also, you can follow me on Facebook. I'm just Anne Ramsey, Equine Rehabilitation. And
I know you've done something with equinology.
With Equitopia.
Equitopia. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I have. I think I have a class on Equitopia that you can look up, and I'm also going to be offering a new online class soon. It's all about recognizing and preventing lameness. So I'll be posting some links about that on Facebook as well. And again, it's just about owner education.
It's so important for the owners to have good information that they can avoid. And that's the number one thing, is that we want to prevent these kinds of conditions.
Absolutely. It's all about equine welfare, cherishing these horses that we love so very much.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Emma, I thought, thank you so much for joining me today. You know, I might be calling on you to come back because there seemed like there's some other topics in there that we could.
Oh, there's so, I
certainly
could talk
dig
about
into.
horses for hours. So
Great.
anytime, Wendy, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. And thank you everybody for joining us. And just remember that you can find this and all of the other webinars on the Surefoot Equine YouTube channel. And also the audio is available on iTunes at Wendy's Winnies. So that's our podcast, Wendy's Windies, and it's Winnies, and it's the audio from these webinars, so that we have people constantly telling us that they're driving their car listening, and it's like they're playing the YouTube driving their cars. Maybe the audio is better. So great. Thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful new year.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.